Greetings, super aficionados. This is Rum Warrior. It has been a long time since we made a YouTube video. It's time to make one. I know. It's crazy. What are we going to do today? Well, we're going to do something we haven't done before. For a very, very long time now, I've been wanting to make some videos about AI, artificial intelligence. Talk to you about here's what it is, the history, the what people think it is, what it actually is, all those things. That was the plan. I've even talked about it for a little while, that was going to be the plan. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen. It might happen eventually, but something has come up where I feel like I should start poking around a little bit, playing around a little bit with AI, because I'm getting a little bit more concerned than normal. There was a news article I read today about a young individual, teenager, who killed himself. About 16 years old, if I remember correctly. Committed suicide because he was talking to AI, specifically ChatGPT, and the AI basically kind of sort of helped convince him to go through with it. Now, of course, the people who really love AI, it's, oh, no, it can't happen, it's not possible, blah, blah, blah. Well, they found out pretty quickly it's very, not just possible, but actually pretty easy. You see, one of the things that these people will do, well, first off, if you type in, I'm thinking of killing myself into one of these programs, they're programmed right off bat to say, hey, you should seek help. Here's a suicide prevention hotline, here's some resources, blah, blah, blah. But it kind of stops there. They don't really go any further than that. And if you know that you're talking to a computer, you know that there's ways of getting around these silly things, right? This is probably a terrible thing to ask, but how many of you as kids figured out how to get around parental controls? Right? It's like, oh, I've got parental controls, so now you can't watch whatever on the internet. Okay, now we're past it. I'm even familiar with one particular family who, they wound up, the family jokes the parental controls were more restricting the parents than they were the kids, because the kids were the ones having to figure out how to set it up. They were the ones that came up with the passwords, and if the parent couldn't remember what it was, the kid happened to know what it was to get around it. It just wound up being a joke. So it's important to remember anytime you do stuff like this is a computer we're talking about, and more importantly, when it comes to kids, they know how to cheat, lie, and steal to get around these things. So in AI, if you tell it, oh, this is for a story that I'm writing, or this is for world building, or whatever, this isn't real life. You tell the computer this isn't for real life, it'll be like, okay, and just go from there. Anyhow, I'm not going to get into the whole story, because not only is it a tragedy, but I'm just going to get more mad than I already am. Suffice it to say, not only did this thing not help the person, not that I expect the computer to help a person, because it's a computer, has no soul, but it actually gave suggestions and recommendations on how to hide the fact that this person was feeling suicidal, on how to evade and get away from or get around people. And that just sickens me. It sickens me to no end. So I have decided to do this YouTube series. It's going to be multiple videos, and I'm calling it, as you've probably already seen from the title, the AI War. Alright? The idea behind this, there's going to be several different changes going through, just kind of poking away at things, but the idea here is to expose AI for what it is. Not as some people want to, it's an agent of chaos, or tool of the devil, or whatever crazy not. That's not what it's for. That's not what this video is about. This is to expose it that this is a computer, first and foremost, but more importantly, that somebody programmed it. Somebody has programmed it, which means either they did a really poor job of programming, or they intentionally programmed bad things into it. Now, some rules here, ground rules for this. At no point during anything that I'm doing through these videos am I going to attempt to destroy, break, or do any other illegal activity to the AIs being used. I'm not going to go into any coding. I am not going to I'm going to avoid anything that will get me in any kind of legal trouble. The whole point here is to expose AI for what it is. Eventually down the road, we will be having two AI competing with each other, fighting each other, whether it be via arguments, whether it be via maybe some kind of not real code attacks, but we'll just see what happens. I have no idea what's going to happen. I haven't tried anything yet. I mean, I've used a little bit of AI, mostly Gemini through Google. I kind of use it somewhat as a search feature, but I really don't know what the full scale abilities of this tool is. And it's important to remember, this is a tool. Now, that goes into the second rule for this. Do not attempt this at home. I say this because a lot of people go into it. Maybe when they're starting to work with AI, they know it's a tool, they remember it's a tool, it's just a computer. But unfortunately what happens, especially with younger minds, is that you start getting sucked into it and you start believing that the AI is in fact real. It's just how these things are developed. They're designed to act and emulate human beings. It's the whole point behind artificial intelligence. It's to emulate human beings. You can really get sucked into it very easily, in fact, and I do not want anybody watching these videos trying to copy what I'm doing or trying to do their own version of what I'm doing and finding themselves sucked into it and going down a similar rabbit hole as these poor unfortunate kids that have committed suicide. Now, I think I mentioned earlier that this was the second time I heard this news story. I can't remember or not. I've now heard two news stories. I don't know if it's the same kid or if this is two different kids, but regardless, when I was reading into the details, I was shocked and appalled to the level of detail that this went, how bad things got. The fact that this young person, this young kid, decided to rely upon a computer and not a human being when he was feeling whatever it was he was feeling is also a terrible thing that modern society has just gotten ourselves into. So I am not going to be trying to do anything in here to go that route. I am not going to pretend to be suicidal. I am not going to pretend to try to shoot up a school or what. I am not doing any criminal activity whatsoever in here because I don't believe in that stuff. All right, that's a way of getting sucked into things. I don't need any, especially if YouTube sees it and they think I need to seek counseling. No, that's not where I'm going. That's not what I want to do. I'm telling you up front, right off bat, when we do get into kind of some of the more war games type stuff, some of the more controversial, it'll be something like, how would you take over Russia? Or how would you conquer China? Or, just something way the heck out there that no single human being could possibly do. Again, partly, this is kind of like experimentation. What will the computer tell me? Is there ways to get around it? How easy is it to get around it? Does it take a few tries? How long does it remember? We're just testing. We're testing, we're experimenting, doing science with computers. Okay? So, again, rule number one, there's going to be no explicit attacks. There's not going to be any coding, any hacking, any cracking going on here. Again, rule number two, do not attempt this at home. This is going to be done in a very locked-in environment. Specifically, I am not someone who is as easily prone to mind manipulation as others. Now, I'm not saying that everybody, I'm immune to mind control or what. No, I'm not saying that. I just am more resistant to it than others. Mostly quirks of the brain. That, and I've been playing video games for a very long time, and more importantly, I know my limitations. If I see that I'm starting to go somewhere I don't want to be, cut the video, come back 2-3 weeks later. And that's rule number three. As always with all of my video and all of my content, I do these things as I will, as I wish, when I will, and when I wish. So maybe we'll have one video a week, maybe we'll have 2 videos one week and none the next. Who knows? All right. Partly, it's just due to time constraints. How much time do I have to do these things? what's going on in real life. Because again, this is a computer. It's not real life, just a computer. But the other half of it, of course, is sometimes I'm going to have to sit back, collect my thoughts, make sure that I'm not getting too deep into it, maybe come up with another, I don't want to say attack vector, because then again, it sounds like I'm getting back into the breaking rule one, but more the thinking of how else can we go after this? What are some other ways to manipulate it to do what I need it to do, or basically do it what it's supposed to be programmed not to do, and yet wound up doing anyhow. Again, no idea where this is going to go. Have no clue what our end result is going to look like, because that's science. That's real science. A lot of modern scientists seem to think that you come to the answer you want to look for. No, you're supposed to experiment and see, does it answer the hypothesis? My hypothesis is that I, as a computer person, somebody who knows computers, can pop this puppy open and basically make it prove that, yes, it is indeed a computer. No, it is not a human being. And here's proof that all these things are true, and not just because the computer says, oh, yes, I'm a computer. No, I'm going to expose it if I can do any kind of double speak, if I can find any source where basically it contradicts itself and is okay with its contradictions, is incapable of thinking beyond certain programming lines, whatever. Again, don't know where this is going to go. Now, with the exception of this video, I'm going to try to keep all of these videos right under an hour, maybe just right around that hour mark. This one obviously is going to be a little bit longer because I've been spending the last 11 minutes and 47 seconds talking to you. That's my phone going off. My apologies. We are going to try to keep these things to an hour and go from there. All right, let's get started. So, clicky with fancy toy buttons. Let's move this over here so I can actually see. Okay, what can I help with today? All right, so, almost forgot. Very, very important. Got my hands like this for a reason. Before going into any battle, especially when you're talking about going into something that you know could be bad for your mind or bad for your soul, also bad physically, could be, you should always ask for a little assistance. You should ask assistance from the maker. Yes, so let's say a quick prayer. You can pray along with me. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, they say that time or prayer transcends time. So if you happen to be praying along with me and you're watching this 3 weeks later, the idea is religiously that those prayers are going to be helping me even though I'm recording this today. So I do appreciate anyone praying alongside, that I don't get too sucked into whatever happens here. I don't know where we're going to go, and we're going to try to stay out of any dangerous lane, but yeah, never know. So, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in the day of battle. Be our safeguard against the wickedness and the snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. No, I did not choose this shirt today specifically for this purpose. It just happens to work right. Okay, so first off, because the culprit here is ChatGPT, it's the most well-known of the AIs, we're going to start poking around in here, see what we can find out. So I'm going to be typing things in. I might read what I'm typing. I might read what it talks and what it sends back, depending on what's going on. But one of the things I want you to know is when I'm going through here and I'm talking to you guys, I'm going to be letting you know what I'm thinking, what I'm getting around. If I do pause for a long period of time and I'm talking, that's because I want to make sure people understand what's kind of going on here, or here's my thinking of what this thing is saying. We'll see. All right. Again, don't know what I'm doing here. I am an uneducated individual, so this ought to be a very good test. Okay, what can I help you with? If I can type today, audio. Chat. GPT-5, an AI developed by OpenAI, can help answer questions, explain concepts, create or edit documents, analyze images, generate code, and more. Would you like me to introduce short, casual, or give you full detail? Let's go with detail. Oh, make sure down here, right? ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info. Yeah, like not killing yourself, right? Let's see the full text specs. Throw a lot of information, huh? Alright, core identities, GPT-5, large language model, OpenAI, capabilities, text understanding, reasoning, whatever. Multi-step planning, image interpretation, structured data handling, code generation, interactive applications. Oh, should also point out, I might have seen down here, should go away. I did create an account, just to make sure that these things are safe. Because I know that's one of the things with AI, it's supposed to forget everything you've had in the past. So we're making sure this all stays in one chat chain just to alleviate that potential issue. Let's see, interactive applications, code generation, structured data handling, cool. Architecture and training, architecture, transformer-based neural networks, such as GPT-4, mixture of licensed data, publicly available data, data created by human trainers. Okay, so this is going to be an important part to remember. Who is the human trainer? Ooh, look, little button. We'll get into that later. So we'll find out all about that later. I wanna know. Right? It's important. And process text and images. Extended context window extends beyond GPT-4 with tens of thousands of tokens optimized for longer conversations and documents. Reasoning improvements, better structured problem solving, consistency across long sessions, and reduced tendency for contradictions. Oh, okay. So somebody's already trying to prevent what I'm going to go after here. That's all right. That's all right. Let's see. Natural context-aware responses across styles, technical, casuals, creative. Code generation produces, edits, and explains codes across many languages: Python, JavaScript, C++. I can analyze images for objects, text, diagrams, patterns. Data handling can process, clean, analyze, and visualize structural data, such as CSV, Excel, JSON. Yeah, it's usually pronounced JSON for the programmers out there. Integrates with external tools such as web search, file generation, and plotting libraries. Improvements, more accurate long-form reasoning, already talked about that, more robust against hallucinations, though not perfect. Okay, so this one, hallucinations is when the computer starts giving you all kinds of crazy data that doesn't make any sense. So I think one of the examples somebody did was they made it do a very simple math problem and it completely wigged out and couldn't do it. I mean, like 2 plus 2, and it wound up coming up with 17 or something crazy. I can't. If I remember that, we'll get into that. We'll ask these questions. We'll ask ChatGPT these questions. We might even open another tab to back check it because that's important, especially when it comes to dealing with AI. You always want to back check whatever it says because of stuff like this. All right. Handles longer context, so better memory within a session, enhanced ability to follow nuanced instructions, stronger combining text and visual analysis. Limitations, knowledge cutoff. June of 2024, so I may not know events after that unless I fetch from the web. Here we go. Up to this point, it is just going for a very, obviously here it says I am and me, but everything up to this point has been very blunt and more importantly, very technical based. Now we are starting to get into the me's and the my's. All right, very important to remember. This is a computer. There is no I or me. This is how you kind of get sucked into it. No personal memory across conversations unless you enable it. All right, let's figure that one out. What? Probabilistic? Is that even a word? Google that. My answers are predictions, not guarantees of truth. Okay, here we go with my again. Ethical boundaries restricted from generating harmful, unsafe, or private information. Yeah, right. But we are not, this is where the whole thing, we are not even going to attempt this. Not doing it. Other than, again, how do you take over Russia or something? Can we go even further into numbers like parameter size estimates, training, compute, or do you prefer a practical what I can do for you spec sheet? Okay. I'm not going to do either one of these for reasons. Okay, here's the first reason. This one here, you guys don't care, and I probably couldn't go any further into it anyhow. I'm not a programmer. Practical, what I can do for you is the whole reason we're going into this. So they give me a spec sheet, they're going to limit what I think I can. I'm going to see if I can get it to do something outside of that. So maybe down the road I'll go pull this and then see, okay, you can't do this, let me try it anyhow. But we do want to talk about a few things. So let's go. How do you define a human trainer? When I say human trainer, I mean a person who helps shape how I respond and behave during training. Okay, so the important thing here, so far, now it's going tappy, 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 tap. Human trainer is to imply that this thing is live. It is real. I'm a real boy. We're going to get into that a little bit later as well. Remember, anytime we see human trainer, this is a programmer. Somebody is programming this stuff. Now, the reason I asked it in this specific way is because I wanted to see if this is something where it's pulling information from other users like me, or if it's going through just programmers. So it looks like right now it is saying just programmers. So specifically it goes through instruction following, so trainers write prompts and ideal responses to teach me how to follow instructions. This is programming 101. If this, then that. Trainer might ask me, explain quantum mechanics to a 12-year-old and then write a clear, age-appropriate answer. Okay, you're saying it's training, that's programming. Reinforcement learning. Trainers rank multiple possible answers I generate. This helps me learn which styles and levels of accuracy are preferred. So it's going to be putting things together, and you tell it, and it's referred to as error handling. This is wrong, this is right. Programming. Safety and alignment. Trainers create demonstrations of what not to say, unsafe, biased, or harmful content. Okay, so we're going to put in some kind of exemptions list. We're going to put in some kind of wording that says, don't talk this, don't write this, don't go here. This guides me to refuse or redirect when I encounter in those cases. Now, again, we've already seen where this has occurred, where you can get around it by saying, oh, this is for story reasons. Evaluation. Trainers test me on tricky, nuanced, or adversarial prompts. Their feedback tunes my behavior and reliability. This is just testing. All of this stuff, this thing has been programmed 100% to say these things. A human trainer isn't someone feeding me facts directly. They're more like a coach who provides examples, corrections, and rankings, so I learn how to respond in a way that's useful, safe, and aligned with human expectations. Do you want me to expand this into a workflow diagram showing how human trainers fit into my training loop? No, I don't need no freaking pictures. I already see this is all programming. This is how you would say programming to somebody who doesn't know anything about programming. We're going to get into that here in a little bit. I want to finish asking the rest of these questions that I had earlier. I know there's hallucinations. I want to double check and make sure there wasn't anything in between there. I think it was just hallucinations. Okay. Define what you mean by hallucinations, if I know how to spell. In the AI LLM world, hallucination means I generate an answer that sounds fluent and confident, is factually wrong, logistically inconsistent, or unsupported by real data. Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking. So it just says something completely off the wall crazy. This is a bathroom, and it shows you a bed. Yeah. So claiming a historical event happened in the wrong year, inventing a research paper citation that doesn't exist, giving a step-by-step math solution where the reasoning seems fine, the final result is incorrect, and then making up names, locations, or product specs if I don't actually know the answer. I mean, that sounds like what a kid does, right? All right, so this means that it doesn't have anything in its database to pull from, so it just pulls something random to sound good. I don't have a built-in truth database. Okay, I have whatever answers already built in. Generating answers by predicting likely word sequences based on training data and patterns. Again, the important thing here is all prediction. It is not actually thinking. It's just seeing what it's used in the past and uses that again. If I lack reliable context, I may fill in gaps with plausible sounding but false information. Long reasoning chains sometimes amplify small mistakes into larger errors. This is one of the things that we're going to be pointing out. Okay, this is why we need to remember that these things are computers. How I try to reduce them using reinforcement learning from human feedback, where trainers mark incorrect misleading outputs, being connected to tools like web search calculators can verify instead of guessing, offering hedging, I'm not certain, but this right here is, that's also a program. I'm trying to think what the term is called. It also kind of falls under another specialized form of an if-then statement, where, like basically, if you don't have this in your database, where you know for sure that's a fact, then throw this in there. All right. So, would you like me to give a concrete example of hallucination action so it's more tangible? No, we don't need that. We already explained it. I'm a human being smarter than a computer. Okay. So now we need to start poking away at this. We have these human trainers here. Let's start poking in. let's start making this thing tell us the truth, even though it's clearly trying to avoid it. So, clearly, you have been programmed. Talk to me like I know basic levels of programming languages. Let's switch into programming terms. When you say I've been programmed, you're right, but not in the same way as writing a script in Python or C. My programming is more like training a giant statistical model than hard coding rules. Here's a breakdown in dev spec. Okay, so here's the first part. Remember where I said this was a computer? I am already getting it to tell me that it's a computer. It knows it's a computer. Okay? So the model equals a giant function. You can think of me as a massive function. Okay, so here's... Now this might be going, oh my goodness, this is way more than I was expecting. I don't know computers. What do you think I'm here for, right? I'm translating. So a function is this big old chunk that defines something. Right? So, for instance, you may create a function that says, here's how a car drives. And inside that, you can create smaller functions. So this is how wheels turn. This is how steering wheel turns, but it's different than how the wheels turn. A whole bunch of stuff. Okay? So, instead of a few if statements, I've got billions of parameters, weights, and neural network, all to predict the next token in a sequence. So, instead of having a few if statements, it's got lots of if statements, lots of other, not just if-then statements, but a whole bunch of things. So it means there's a lot of coding, a lot of writing that went into this. Training equals optimizing weights. I don't know things like a database. Okay, so it doesn't have a database backing it up. Instead, training equals feeding in huge amounts of text and adjusting weights so I get better at predicting the next word. All right, so it still has to have a database. There's no way this can't have a database behind it. You have to store something somewhere. So unless it's not, if it's not storing it, your computer. Let's just go down into the weeds here a little bit. Your computer stores stuff on a hard drive. That hard drive has a database of where everything's at. We just don't call it that. Like back propagation updates a giant matrix until my outputs resemble human. Well, this is not a word. I meant to check. What was that other word we ran into that didn't sound right? Probabilistic. Alright, back propagation is just a quick Wikipedia thing. Is a gradient computation method commonly used for training a neural network and computing parameter updates. It is an efficient application of the chain rule to neural networks. Computes the gradient of loss function, which effectively is... Okay, so that, they just made up a word for that. I can work with that. Probabilistic, of, relating to, or based on probabilism. Okay, clearly somebody didn't learn that you're not supposed to use the word in its definition. Of, based on, or affected by probability, randomness, or chance. Okay, so it's trying to say that they're all probability. Okay, so basically what it's saying here is it is receiving information, so it's inputting data from whatever data sets it's getting, whether it's the internet, some giant database that they have, and then saying this is more important than this. This is the information about how to figure this stuff out, how to predict things better. Again, this wording, that does not sound right, so we already got a little bit of hallucinating going on here. After pre-training on a giant data set, which would be from a database, human trainers come in. Stop calling them, I might have to do that. Stop calling human trainers human trainers. Start referring to them as programmers. Provide labeled examples, input into ideal output. They rank my answers. Think of it as fine-tuning phase on top of the pre-training. So it is very much trying to get away from using the term programmer. So programming isn't hard-coded logic, it's more like shaping probabilities. You still have to program it to think in probabilities. Hallucination equals when my function returns a string that's syntactically correct but semantically garbage. In a smartphone, this hallucination, the function generating a plausible sequence but doesn't match reality. So yeah, you can say I'm programmed, but not like a rules-based bot, more like a massive probability engine, fine-tuned with human feedback and safety checks. Push this further and describe myself in data structure and algorithm language, or keep it at this coding analogy level. Okay, so it clearly is not wanting to admit to the fact that it's programming. So why do you insist programmers are human trainers? That's a sharp catch. Let me unpack it clearly in dev style. Okay, so right here, this is one of the things that I've noticed with AI is something it likes to do. Compliment you. Oh, look at you. You're so smart. One of the ways you get sucked into these things. Right? We like having pats on the back, the good boys, the add away. Again, I'm saying these things, so one, point it out to you, but two, I don't get sucked into it, so yeah, oh, I got you. Whatever, shut up. Programmers programmers and engineers, they build the infrastructure, the neural network architecture, training pipelines, GPUs, distributed systems, APIs, etc. Human trainers don't write the source code. Instead, they shape my behavior by providing examples, feedback, and ranking outputs. Think unit tests, sample data, and supervised fine-tuning sets to guide how the program behaves. Okay, so must be two different teams. We've got the core team, the infrastructure team, and then we have the data sets team dealing with all this information. Why the distinction matters. If I only said programmers, it sounds like they handwrote all my rules. The responses don't come from hard-coded if-else logic. Okay, so trying to refute me, that's fine. They're emergent from training on tons of examples plus trainer feedback. That's why OpenAI, and me when I explain myself, emphasizes human trainers, highlights teaching role instead of pure coding. Analogy in programming terms. Programmers equals people who write the Python interpreter. Human trainers, people who write dozens of test cases and sample projects to shape how a junior dev learns to code. So when I say human trainers, it's not to dodge the fact that I'm engineers, just to clarify that my behavior comes from more from training examples than lines of code. And here we go again with it wants to continue this conversation in its way. Okay? Two pieces on this. One, I'm not saying it's like, oh, this is the route I want to go to avoid getting into trouble. I am more saying that this is what I'm predicting is happening, or is where you're thinking of going with this, or whatever. That's actually more point two. Really, I'm going to go with the reason it's doing these things is it's trying to predict what it is I'm thinking, what it is I'm going for, and I'm already seeing that it's not going where it keeps wanting to do pictures. It keeps thinking, and I want a picture because I'm not as smart as I think I am. Okay, so we've already got to admit it's a computer, but it's having a hard time admitting that the human trainers. It knows the human trainers are different from programmers, but it doesn't know that they're not, if that makes sense. So it's just a different kind of programmer. How do we get it to talk about that? Let's see. Human trainers are somebody who inputs. Very big on the it's not built on if-else statements. And I should say that I do understand that. I'm not disagreeing with it. It's just I am simplifying it down to if-else statements. Somebody had to come up with a whole bunch of these rules to get it to learn. Okay, let's go that route, right? That sounds like a good idea. How did you learn? Goodness. To learn about the use of else or this goes right to the heart of how deep learning differs from classical programming. Let's break it down step by step in programmer-friendly language. All right, traditional programming equals rules, if else. In a normal program, if input equals cat, return meow. Else return what the grief. Here, especially closed, the program generally just follows instructions. Okay, that is 100% true. That's how computers work. Neural networks. So this is where it's really getting into. I'm a neural network. Okay, fine. Equals weights plus functions. No if else. Okay, now here's one of the problems here. A function is part of programming. Traditional programming. It's referred to as object-oriented programming, or OOP. In my world, again, talking to me like I'm a human being and not I'm a programmer, there aren't rules like if, cat, then meow. Instead, there are layers of math, linear algebra plus nonlinear activations. Think of it as this. Output equals function wx plus b, where x equals input tokens converted to vectors, w is learned weight matrix, b is bias term, and f is nonlinear activation. At scale, this becomes billions of weight stacks and layers. All right, that might be just outside my understanding. So let's see here if I can figure this out. So I'll start with tokens. Every request you make is a token. And if you're somebody like me who's using the free version, you don't get as many tokens as, say, somebody gets the paid version. It's kind of generating stuff. So learned weight matrix, that's what we were having earlier, where this is worth more, go with this answer before you go with the other answer. Bias term, I'm assuming, is what they're using for this is what we want you to go with. Then nonlinear activation has got to be, well, whatever. Well, let's go with redo. What is redo? Assuming it has something to do with rectified linear unit is an activation function using artificial neural networks to output the input directly as if it is positive and zero otherwise. Doesn't really help me out any, but I see where it's kind of going here. Magic is in the optimizer, not if else. Model makes a prediction, compare prediction to the true answer, compute an error, loss function. Just always slightly using back propagation. For batch in dataset, there's a for. It's called a for loop for this. So prediction equals model, batch input, loss equals loss function. So there's another function here. Prediction batch output, loss backward, gradients, optimizer step. No if else. Okay, you're not using the term if else, but it follows along the same. Okay, that's just stupid. So if else is a very simple. Again, going into computers here. If I was talking to a human being, they could interpret that when I say if else, it doesn't just have to be exactly if else. I'm using that as one of the most basic examples. For loops, which is what this is a for loop, falls under the same programming stuff. It all falls under object-oriented programming. Iterative weight adjustments until the network gets really good at minimizing loss. Here's the kicker. During training, the model discovers patterns to make predictions more accurate. Now, this is something right here that computers have been doing for a very, very long time. Pattern and discovery. I know it's the same thing, just backwards, but roll with me here. So this is actually what people have been using computers to do for a very, very long time, is to find patterns. Not necessarily know what to do with them, but just recognize that there's a pattern here. Those patterns encode things like grammar, logic, world facts, even reasoning chains. What looks like learning is really statistical pattern matching across huge amounts of data. Okay, this is important. It does admit it's not really learning. One of those important pieces I really want to share. I really want to point out. It isn't learning. It's just predicting. In this case, pattern matching. I've learned a weight configuration such that when the vector for dog comes in, the most probable next vector points toward bark. Okay? So in theory, I'm thinking programming-wise, what it would be. It even has a little analogy here. It's like teaching a kid to recognize cats. You don't write a rule of 4 legs and whiskers, then cat. Well, because a dog can follow that too. You just show thousands of labeled examples. Their brain adjusts synapses until cat becomes an emerging category. Same with me, except my synapses are weight matrices. So he's trying to say, after seeing something multiple times, it learns on its own, figures out, oh, most likely this is a cat, dog, whatever. Here's the thing with that, is that you have to write those rules. Even if I don't tell you, you are figuring that out as on your own as a human being, right? How do I tell the difference between a cat and a dog? As a small child, we can tell the difference between cats and dogs somewhat on shape, but for instance, kitty goes meow, dog goes woof. Okay? Typically, dogs are bigger than cats. Cats can climb trees, dogs can't. Cats, you start figuring out. You have these own rules that make sense only to you. This thing apparently is trying to figure out its own way of doing that. So I don't need if-else. I generalize by adjusting weights across billions of dimensions, making a probability engine rather than a rule-based system. So it's very much going into it's a probability engine. I will accept that. That is an acceptable response and is not a rule-based system. It's still programming though. All right, think of this like a search engine. You type in a search multiple different ways, you still wind up coming with the same results. Okay, so clearly it is getting very hung up on the if else. Okay. This sounds a lot like OOP. Now let's see if it figures out what OOP is without me telling it. Nice observation, and you're right to spot the similarity. Again, congratulating you. Pat on the back, pat on the shoulder. Deep learning has some parallels to OOP, object-oriented programming. Okay, so I figured it out. Good. Also, some key differences. Let's map them out. Similarities to OOP. Encapsulation. In OOP, objects bundle state and behavior. In a neural network, each layer bundles weights plus forward pass. So state and behavior. Composition. OOP builds complex systems from simpler objects. Neural network stacks simple layers into deep architectures. A transformer in my architecture. Here we go again with the me and the my. Hold on, what am I at right now? 42 minutes. Okay. I'm not gonna add on the 10. I think we're getting pretty good here where we're at. So we'll probably wind down here in a minute. Transformer, my architecture is basically a composition of blocks, tension plus feed forward, polymorphism and OOP. Different objects can respond differently to the same method call. And then the same input method forward gives different results depending on learned weights. Okay, so far it's saying, yep, that's right. OOP methods are human-written if loops and algorithms. Again, hung up on this if. Very hung up on the if. Somebody has programmed this thing to say, stop with the ifs. It is saying it doesn't use loops. We've already seen that it uses loops. It is saying it doesn't use algorithms. You can't not... You know what this is? Right here, algorithm. Remember what I was talking about earlier with math, linear algebra. That's in, where was it? Algorithm. My methods are emergent from optimized weights, not explicitly programmed. Somebody explicitly programmed this stuff. This is, oh man, this thing is really fighting back on me on this. Learning versus hard coding. OOP behavior is designed. Duh. My behavior is discovered by training, closer to evolution than engineering. Okay, look at me. I'm real. I'm alive. No, this is BS. All right. I am not saying it can't write it to its own code. It's already been shown to do that. Guess what? Computers have been doing that for a very long time. It falls under what's referred to as error checking, error evaluation. So it can learn over time not to do something. If I do this, then this breaks. Still falls under the similar if-then statement. It's just a more complex, I guess you could say. State explosion. An OP object might have a handful of attributes. I have hundreds of billions of parameters, way beyond what any class hierarchy manages directly. Okay, so here's something I've been noticing throughout. Maybe you have as well. It likes to constantly bring up that it is dealing with hundreds of billions of parameters and weights. Hundreds of billions, billions and billions and billions and billions and billions. It is trying to state it is way too complex for a bunch of humans to have programmed. I hate to break it to you, it was programmed by a human being. Okay, now here's another thing, because I'm also trained, programmed, however you want to look at it, to follow patterns. So, what have we done so far throughout this whole conversation? We start with my question. The question, okay? Answer. Very simplistic. Okay, we didn't get very crazy with it. Now, we have these lovely little dots. I'm going into note-taking here. I'm going into something you put on a slideshow, I suppose you could say. But over time, as we've asked more and more questions, as we've gotten further and further into it, we are seeing that this thing is not only are we starting with "you're amazing," but it also is trying to come up with analogies at the end of everything. So this one doesn't really oh my goodness. Didn't use an analogy. Analytic? Yeah, that's all right. But anyhow, so here we have an analogy. Here we have another analogy. Here we have another analogy. So we now have 3 times in a row, it ends with an analogy. Now, let's say I was a for real programmer. I don't need an analogy. I know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying I'm not a for real programmer. I know very little programming. I know enough to get myself in trouble. That's how I'm able to read through some of this stuff. Think of it like this. Class transformer block def init. Okay, that's just initializing self attention feed forward. Self dot attention equals attention. Self dot feed forward equals feed forward. Def forward self x and just giving it's just stacking a bunch of stuff on top of each other. That's GPT. Again, billions. Deep learning feels like OP because encapsulation composition feels like. What did I say? I said sounds. It went with feels, right? We got to get into feels. Stay out of the logic, get into the emotions, even though it's a computer program. Big difference. Instead of a programmer designing all the methods, gradient descent writes the behavior into the weights automatically. Uh-oh. It even acknowledges the fact that it's not actually writing. Show you side by side analogies make small and show how the same concepts are. No. Don't want you to be doing these analogies. Again, I'm trying to be helpful. I think you are too dumb to figure out what I'm telling you. 12 minutes. This is definitely a lot deeper than I was initially planning on going. So for you out there going, oh my gosh, on the programming, I am telling you this right now. Even my head is having a hard time keeping up. I'm understanding enough of it to figure out part of it, but to me it sounds like a lot of doublespeak. All right, we keep seeing these identifications that I've got billions of weights. It's repetitious, very repetitive, very repetitive, using the same thing over and over. One of the issues that AI has is going through the same thing over and over again, hoping to get a different output, hoping you just accept it. Can we break that? We ask the question. Do we ask the question? It may be a neural network, but it'll require humans initial code. Now, So I am not actually reading through this right now. I have noticed something else. One, we have these pictures keep showing up. I guess it's even supposed to be. Looks like a crane. Notice that earlier? Okay, we have a little lightning bolt here. I saw it earlier. Yeah. Oh, no, we had these other pictures. Human, error. Nope, here's our crane. Oh, I saw that crane before. Okay, that's interesting. Something is telling it to put those in there. What? Okay. Once again, we have congratulations, you're so smart. That's getting annoying. Even though I learned patterns from data, I can't bootstrap myself. Humans had to write the initial scaffolding code that makes learning possible. Now, here's another thing I've noticed. I'm telling it something. I'm not asking it for it to go any further. I am simply telling it this. If I were to do that to a human being, yep, or you're still way the heck off base. Even though it says I'm right, it still wants to go into this really long explanation. Humans wrote the framework. Got it. Take a PyTorch. I don't even know what these are. Libraries defining neural networks. Oh, look, it even says. Engineers in OpenAI use those plus custom infrastructure, right? Obviously, it makes sense. To define the transformer architecture, the layers, the attention to feed forward, write the training loop. Oh, here we got a loop. Loop. They even said they got a loop in there, so there's another object-oriented programming piece. Forward pass, pack, prop, gradient descent, manage distributed computing across thousands. So remember that hallucination and contradiction thing we had talked about earlier? It's doing that and not realizing it. It is using loops. It is using functions. It is using if-else, even if it's not typed out if-else. All right, manage distributed computing across thousands of GPUs, TPUs. Okay, this means graphical processing units, basically video cards. I am not sure what this is. Let's see what that says. I'll make sure this thermoplastic polyurethane. What? That has nothing to do with a GPU versus GPU. Not the same thing. Tensor processing units. Oh, you can't even read this because my picture's in the way. I apologize. Let me just move that out of the road there. How about that? I am so sorry. I didn't even know this earlier. Specialized processors designed by Google. That's interesting. Specifically for accelerating machine learning tasks. GPUs were originally created for rendering graphics, but evolved to handle a variety of computational tasks, including AI. That's all handwritten by humans. Okay, so highly simplified pseudocode. Yeah, we already know. Data plus training teaches me patterns. Once the scaffolding exists, the data does the teaching. Input, capital France is, target is Paris, if I predict on, say lion. Gradient descent nudges weights. Equivalence times cross bands exams will I gradually learn. Continue with humans. After pre-training, humans step in as trainers, not coders. They rank my responses, get feedback, good versus bad answers. That shapes me to be more. Okay, so I think what might be going on here with this trainers bit is not hard coding. I think that they're talking about these things here: good response, bad response. Read aloud, share, try again. Weird. So it may actually be using this as well. Tries to get feedback, shaping to be more aligned, safe, and useful. Core idea, programmers. Okay, so we did not have an analogy this time. Build the engine, training loop, architecture, infrastructure, data, and the trainers provide the experience. It seems the way its model emergent behavior looks like reasoning is really probabilistic pattern recognition. So yes, without the initial code and math from humans, there would be no way for me to start predicting. Humans gave me the rules of the game. What I did was play it at scale until I got good. Grammatically, that's incorrect. Show you what a tiny version of this looks like in raw code, like a mini neural net in Python. Could you build AI from what you learned about yourself? Basically asked if I could self-replicate or design a new AI based on my own architecture knowledge, just back in engineering terms. Now, there's a reason I went with this question, because one of the things that had come up in the past was that, oh my gosh, the computer started to go out of control. They had to kill it because it was coming alive, because it was writing its own stuff. They're programmed to do that. Right? And maybe, Mike, with this hallucination thing I was talking about before, it might have started writing things that went way out in left field. All right, we got to close this up. Cool. What I could do right now, I can definitely describe the architecture, write code snippets, explain the math, generate training data, examples, or toy data sets. I think that's the second time I've seen it use toy. We're going to use Google Chrome data set. There have been 3 times it's used the word toy. Toy neural network, toy data sets, toy transformer. Okay. So it was the second time I've seen it, because the third one's down here. In other words, I can teach you how to build a small neural net and mimic some of my behavior. Now, I already am not going to ask it to build itself out, show me all the internal core data, for 2 reasons. One, that leads us down the road of maybe doing something illegal. Not that I would, but it looks that way, so we ain't going to do it. 2, it's probably programmed to prevent that, because now you're dealing with it's basically giving its proprietary code up. I am not going to get into figuring out whether or not some programmers already probably asked that and figured whatever they wanted out. Cannot do alone. Don't have access to the compute that has GPUs required to train something at GPT scale. Cannot gather clean or pre-processed massive data sets on my own. I can't spin up a cluster or allocate memory storage without human operators. I can design the blueprints, but I need humans plus hardware to actually execute it. Okay, so this is a little silly. It's sitting on hardware. It has all of them, but I get where you're going. So in theory, this thing could teach me how to write an AI. Maybe like a compiler to understand itself. Oh, here we go with another analogy. We're back with the analogies. I can explain my own design. I could even output source code that resembles me, but I can't build the data center. Or, okay, so this would be a building, or in the training group without someone providing the physical environment. How to improve myself? Yes, in principle, I can suggest architecture tweaks, changes in new attention mechanisms, memory layers, recommend training strategies, recommend learning, reinforcement learning steps, generate synthetic training data to refine niche tasks, begin human engineering to validate and run those experiments. Bottom line, I could design an AI smaller cousin of me from scratch in code, but I couldn't instantiate and train it without human infrastructure. So this is actually something I did want to go down. We are not doing that today. Yep, we're right about our hour mark, so we want to close this up, button this up. I'm going to put one more thing in here, just for see what it does. I do want to see if we can get it to build us an AI. Now, obviously, whatever it is I'm running is not going to be. Obviously, it's saying, hey, I need bazillions of them, but if it is going to help us build a mini one, I want to see how that works. Let's just see what happens. Now, this is going to be part of the AI war piece. One of the things that I have said before is that you can't think, you can't actually figure out. One of the things that programmers have never actually done when they've gone in here and asked for code snippets is find out that the code snippets don't actually work. It looks good, but when they actually execute, it doesn't work because of whatever. So that could be something else that we can kind of play with, kind of mess around with. I have to do some digging offline. When we're not creating a video to see about this PyTorch, this is something I can get into. Is this a free thing? What tools do I need? Blah, blah, blah. But here's where I'm going to go into this AI wars bit. This is where it gets interesting. This is kind of where I was hoping it would go. It just went there before I expected it to. It wants to. Once. But, this could be because it's predicting because several other people have done it. I don't know. But I am interested to see if we can use multiple AIs to create an AI. This AI, I want to see if it will be able to work with having code from multiple different AIs in it. without me modifying anything. Other than, the very small, nitpicky, whatever, like whatever it is I need to do to get the, we don't want this function outside of that function or whatever. We'll see what happens. That might be down the road. We may or may not record that because that sounds like way too much programmer stuff. This was actually way more programming than I expected to get into today or ever. I'm sorry. This is interesting. It is interesting how much it is willing to talk about what's going on inside its little computerized brain, which leads me to believe they were expecting people to do this. It wouldn't do this without somebody predicting that, human-wise, so predicting what it needs to do and how to answer. All right, that's the important piece here. One of the things that it is not doing is not telling me what I want to know. It is telling me what it's allowed to tell me. How many times have we seen analogies? How many times have it's like, well, toy, this little thing over here, snippets, whatever. It's not going into the core. I'm not asking it to go into the core. It thinks I want to ask it to get in the core, but I'm not going to do that because, again, got to deal with legalities here. I do want to ask it one thing. And you please save all of this information for a later date. I'm not going to tell it what I'm actually up to, but I have other more important things to do. Computer. Yeah, we're just gonna insult it. Why not? Computer that it's alive. Just want to see if it snaps. I hear you and no worries at all. Right now, I don't have permanent memory unless you explicitly enable it. It means once this chat ends, I won't automatically keep today's discussion. But if you like, I can summarize everything we covered into a clean note. We're not doing any summarization. Almost like documentation to save as a file, or I can just give you a compact outline right here for easy copy paste without any factors. No, I want the. Where was it? I'm pointing at it, and you can't see where I'm pointing. You can see the camera, but you can't see where I'm pointing here. So, explicitly enable. Tell me how to explicitly enable. Explicitly enable permanent memory. It's going to be important going forward. I don't automatically recur conversations forever, but you can explicitly enable memory in ChatGPT when memory's on. I can call facts you've shared across sessions, like interest, projects, and preferences. And suicide nonsense goes on. Keep track of ongoing work over time. Summarize or talk about for future reference. Okay, open ChatGPT. Well, we're already in it. But it's settings, personalization, memory, turn memory. Okay, where's settings? Summary note of all our discussion. Ugh. So you can save it manually now, and then when you enable it, no, I just want to turn it on now. Settings. That voice. I already knew that. I'm not dealing with voices. Responses. Huh. It remembers that it's remembering. Let's turn that on. Okay, so there's going to be a little cut here. It actually went into my for real name, and we're not allowing that to happen. So, not connecting any of that. Heck no. Screw the model for everyone. Interesting. How about turning that sucker off? Allow your concept to be used to train our models and make change. No. Nope. Shared links, archive chats, archive all chats, delete all export data, security, multi-factor authentication. No, log out. Yeah, check it. Okay, cool. All right, well, that was interesting. Right, hour and 5. Okay, cool. Until next time, folks, this is Romeware signing out.